Hi, this video is to show how to use TinkerCAD to design parts of the Whitebox Prosthetic app for 3D printing. So I'm going to need in Whitebox to have my engineering drawing open. That's under Outputs, Drawings. And I'm also going to need to refer often to the Whitebox Build and Test instructions. Okay. So the first thing I notice is that my upper arm, let's see, the forearm is the upper view and the arm is the lower view. So I guess my forearm here needs to be 235 millimeters long. So I know from using TinkerCAD a good bit that this grid is only 200 millimeters long as the default. I'm going to change that to 300 by 300 millimeters. I also like to work in a top view, and I like to work with a parallel projection. I'll drop this box on here to show why. So in perspective view, I see more than one side at a time. For alignments, if I switch to this, switch to orthographic view, I get a parallel projection, which is better in my mind for these layouts. I'm going to drop a ruler and at one of the main grid lines and drag my box over to that center of the ruler. I could zoom in there also just to see that things are centered up. Okay, so I know that I need this piece to be 235 millimeters long from my engineering drawing, but the drawing itself does not tell me the width or the thickness. I had to find that under Build and Test instructions, where you'll see that the stock is 400 millimeters long by 25 by 4. So I know that I need this thickness here to be 25 millimeters, and I want my height to be 4, which I could set here, or I can also set the height by adjusting here and snapping to 4 or typing 4 for the height. Okay, back to a pure top view. I'm ready to start placing some cylinders or some holes. The first thing I would point out is that I like to make sure that I've set the number of sides on the hole to the maximum. Okay, zoomed in, you can see that with 20 sides, you can sort of see the number of sides. Of course, we want this circle to be as smooth as possible, so just set to the maximum number of sides. Now, with the circle selected, I can also adjust the diameter. The engineering drawing does not show the diameter of these holes. I had to find that in the Build and Test instructions also. So here I'm told that the larger hole is 1/4 inch, and further down I find that the smaller holes are 1/8 of an inch. So I could set this, I could just convert to millimeters and set this at exactly 1/4 inch. So converting 1/4 inch to millimeters, I find that that's 6.35 millimeters. However, we learned that when we 3D print these holes, because we're dealing with melting plastic, they nearly always print smaller than designed. So we want to design this a little bit larger. I'm going to design these holes for simplicity and just based on past experience at 6.5 millimeters to obtain the equivalent of a 1/4 inch drilled hole. Now, you notice with the ruler placed here, we're getting a measurement to the edges of this circle because the circle is selected. I want to change that to use midpoint. I don't want to measure to an edge of the circle. I want to my measurements should be to the center as they are in the engineering drawing. So I see here this 1/4 inch hole is 65 millimeters from the center, and then it's pretty much right in the middle. So I would change this to 65, and this distance to the center of the circle should be half of 25 or 12.5 millimeters. Okay, that hole is properly positioned, I believe, and all we should need to do, it should be flat on the plane, ready to cut a hole right through that rectangle. It can also be moved, not that that's necessary in this case. But I just need to select both items by dragging them in a box, or I could use Control A, and I can group them right here. Note that the shortcut is Control G. I usually like to use the keyboard, but since I'm making a video, I'll show clicking on that button. Okay, so that hole is placed. Just for review, I'll go ahead and place these 1/8" holes as well. One at 127 millimeters and one at 15. Okay, so I need a cylindrical hole with maximum sides, 1/8 of an inch, 0.125 inches, or maybe I can type a fraction in here. Now, again, from experience, we find that we need to print this a little larger. We find that 3.5 millimeters makes for a good clearance hole for the 1/8 inch. So we know that the exact conversion is 3.175, but we're going to design this at 3.5 because we're 3D printing. Okay, with that selected, I could use my Control C, Control V, copy paste to make an additional hole that I know I'm going to need later. Okay, now let's position one of these at 15 millimeters and 12.5. Okay, and this one will be at, so here's the 15 right in the middle. This one is at 127 and right in the middle. Of course, your dimensions are going to vary depending a lot on your design. I'm just building this off of the default. So for here, 127 millimeters and 12.5. Okay, all that's left to do now is to group these holes. I can close my ruler if I want. I could always bring that back. Just select everything and Control G or this button for group. And that piece, that upper arm piece at least, is complete.